Hey, what's up you guys? You're watching Team APS, Paul here, and so as you all know, the ban list just dropped and there's a lot going on, a lot of cards moved around. It's honestly one of the biggest ban lists I think I've ever seen. And a lot of people are wondering, what are the good decks going to be? Because with Zodiacs more or less out of the picture, True Dracos and Dinosaurs really nerfed, but then also a lot of decks that are like still new and sort of developing. It's a tough question, like what do you play at a regional? What do you play at even your locals? What's happening? So in this video, I'm going to give you guys 10 predictions I have for the most competitive decks in this new format. This is before Circuit Break, before Spirit Warriors, so I'll probably make a new video then, but yeah, let's hop in. The first deck is Trickstars. So this is kind of a no-brainer. It was a rogue deck before, it was always kind of a threat. It combines burn strategies with just sort of general control. The Droll and Lockbird reincarnation combo didn't really get nerfed at all. And this deck is still super consistent. Light Stage searches Candina, Candina searches whatever you need, and Light Stage is searchable by Terraforming, which did not get hit on the ban list. So this deck is actually super consistent. It's still a really scary threat. I'm actually interested in seeing what side deck approaches people take to counter this deck, because it's going to be a lot more prevalent now that people don't have to worry about getting shut out by Zodiacs and shut out by True Dracos. So I think it would be a really safe pick. They've still got more support coming. Yeah, definitely Trickstars. The next deck's World Chalice. So this debuted in Code of the Duelist, and I've kind of gone on record in saying I wasn't super impressed by the deck. But a lot of things have changed. Now that Zodiac's are out of the way, now that Dracos are out of the way, I think that it actually stands out a lot better. It's a good combo deck. It can make some really, crazy combos, really big fields, Ningirsu and Aurum and Ib, and as more Link monsters come out, it's the type of deck that kind of gets stronger and stronger over time because it lends itself well to those combos. Not only that, but with Rescue Rabbit actually coming to 3, this deck is a little bit more consistent. It can run 2 or 3 copies of Rescue Rabbit, which means that you open a lot better. For those of you who don't know anything about World Chalice, the Rescue Rabbit is one of the best opening plays they can hope for, so that's really good. And I just think it's one of those things where it needed other stuff to move, and so that's kind of what happened. It still has a bit of a weakness to Max C, and Max C didn't get banned, so that's kind of a shutout card for it. And hand traps in general hurt this deck, but I think it's in way better shape than it ever was, and now it's actually a decent investment. The next decks are some old ones, ABCs. I don't care that much for this deck, but it is a really simple, effective deck. It's not severely hampered by the link mechanics, as we've seen in both the OCG and here to some degree. ABCs are still more than capable of topping. Union Hangar is still around, Terraforming still around. It's not hard to play this deck. It's not difficult to really get this deck. It's pretty cheap, and ABC Buster Dragon, it's all still here. You generally only need to have like one Buster Dragon out at a time. I mean, it's possible to incorporate links into the strategy, but you don't really have to. Buster Dragon's still really good control, and this deck still maintains a lot of advantage. So I think that it's going to be one of those ones where people definitely just sort of fall back on it, at least until the next big thing comes out. Another old deck is Invoked. So if you've been keeping up with the OCG, you'll know that this deck has seen some success as well. Alistair did not get hit like it did over there, so we still have our triple Alistair, Magical Meltdown, Invocation itself. And this deck it's kind of all about, putting out one boss monster per turn, and if that boss monster gets dealt with, it's fine. People, have combined lots of different engines with this. There's artifacts, there's Wind Witches, there's like the Spellbook engine, there's True Dracos, which, is something that's kind of dead, but like kind of not, and it could all really get merged easily with this deck. I've seen this deck used even with like upcoming things like Altergeist, so I think it's going to be one of the ones. It's actually really scary. It's a super good control deck. It kind of reminds me of Hat, and I think that it's safe only in that it can do a really good job of countering pretty much anything else that comes in its way, because the fast threats, as we've established, are gone, so it's only going to really be dealing with like more low power level decks. I think it'll actually be a really good choice. The next deck is Lightsworns, a deck that it's always kind of had a luck factor involved in it. It's never necessarily going to be the best deck because there is just that chance that mills don't go right and stuff, but it did get a 3rd Charge of the Light Brigade, so that does increase this deck's consistency. I've always felt like Lightsworn's biggest weakness is just opening with hands where you can't actually mill anything. So now that you have a 3rd charge, it makes it a lot easier to get to your Lightsworn monsters, and the charge itself is a mill. And we still have, that Grassland Screener. It's not banned or anything, so It's totally playable. Left arm is still a really good way to search it. I think that the 60 card sort of Lightsworn zombie variants will remain very popular. You know, still got the Brilliant Fusion stuff, still got the Predaplants, you know, all that stuff. So I think that this deck is going to be a really powerful threat. Minerva's really strong, everybody can get a hold of it. Omega kind of gets around some of the link mechanics. I think it's going to be pretty fun to get a hold of. Not too expensive, a lot of the stuff's been reprinted, so expect to see it around at least locally. Next deck is actually true Dracos. So this is a bit of a surprise because this deck got so hammered by the ban list, but the truth is, Draconic Diagram and Masterpiece, for better or worse, didn't actually end up on the list at all. It was a bit of a surprise, but Dynamite Knight's banned, and Ignis Heat's limited, and True King's Return, those cards are kind of all hit, but it's kind of interesting to see that this deck could totally still be like a thing. I think that Masterpiece Turbo, people have already tested this out and sort of confirmed it's a playable thing. They've got, what is it, Waterfall of Dragon Souls. You can run that at 3. It's a really easy way to quickly get to your Masterpiece and just filter through your deck. I think that if you run it kind of as a turbo variant, a lot like how Towers Turbo worked, this could still be a real problem. I mean, decks that couldn't out, you know, Masterpiece before don't really have it any easier. So a deck that can just get that out fast would be great. And in addition to that, they still have, you know, one Ignis Heat. They still got Majesty Maiden. There are other True Draco monsters if you want, you know, play around with those. And like Card Demise didn't get hit, so you can use the Spellbook engine. I've seen people kind of do that here and there. The Wind Witches even. So I think that, unfortunately, maybe this deck will still be playable and maybe even one of the more dominant decks, but that remains to be seen. Another deck that maybe people aren't so happy to hear will be good is Dinosaurs. So Dinosaurs did get hit. Lithosogem is banned, and I think that is a really big deal. That means no more like popping 2 baby dinosaurs and just going completely nuts and obliterating your opponent's extra deck and stuff. And Miscellaneous Saurus is limited, so combos aren't going to just be happening every single turn. On the other hand, though, there's still 3 Fossil Dig, there's still 3 Overraptor, there's still 3 Ultimate Conductor Tyranno, and there's still Draconic Diagram if you're into that. So, I mean, the problem here, though, is that it's going to be a little bit harder to have like a search target. I mean, maybe they can supplement that with the Fire True King, not really sure. But I think that Dinosaurs still keep a lot of the consistency. They don't lose all too much of it. They just kind of have slightly weaker starting plays and, you know, no more dang long shenanigans. I think that, like True Dracos, it's kind of going to be a bit of a rogue deck, something that you need to watch out for and probably still sort of prep for. It's just not going to maybe be as dominant. So next is Pendulum Magicians. So this was always kind of a low-key, pretty strong deck. It is really the only Pendulum strategy that isn't super hurt by these new rules. The Pendulum Magicians are still able to kind of circumvent it and all. And now that like Wavering Eyes is at 3 and Luster Pendulum is at 2, I think that the deck is really gonna be pretty scary. I mean, like Wavering Eyes hitting like 2 Pendulum Magicians is pretty scary. Luster Pendulum, kind of same idea. Pendulum decks in general get a bit of a boost, but this is just the most relevant one, so that's kind of why I'm including it. And this deck actually works well with a lot of different engines, so I think that flexibility means that it's still going to be a pretty viable threat. It can make decent use of links. It's still sort of susceptible to a lot of the stuff that stops pendulums, you know, anti-spell fragrance and that sort of thing. But who knows? I mean, this deck was always, like, in my opinion, maybe number 4 or 5 after the big 3, so I'll see what happens. Next up is Paleozoics, a deck that fell out of sort of relevance, but I don't think that nothing on the ban list really seems to have hit it. And again, the threats are out of the way. Paleozoics is a really good control deck. And now that the competition's a lot weaker, I think that it will be able to make a lot better use of cards like, you know, Totally Awesome, because Miss Starboy is coming out basically this Friday. So it'll be a lot easier for this deck to make use of those types of cards. It's never really had much of a consistency problem. I know a lot of people don't like facing this deck. They can feel like it's a little bit of a drag, but there's no reason not to do it. It's really pretty cheap. Toad's been reprinted now. I say go for it. And the last deck is Kosmos, a deck that honestly and truly everyone just kind of like knows it's been a decent pick. Doesn't have to deal with link mechanics, doesn't have to deal with really like any of this ban list shenanigans. Terraforming, thankfully, is still around, so it's easy to get to Cosmo Town. And this deck is just, I mean, like, it's Cosmos. You really already know what it does. You've got big ships, you've got pilots. It's pretty consistent. It can be a little bit bricky, but I think that it will be pretty scary to face until the next, like, sort of big things come along. So If you have your Cosmo cards, or if you don't, they're not too expensive to my knowledge. I mean, like maybe there have been some small buyouts here and there. I think it's just a really strong, solid pick. It's very familiar territory. So those are 10 different decks that I think will be the most competitive this September new format, all before these new sets come out. At which point things are probably going to change, you know, Magical Musketeers and Weather Painters and maybe even some stuff in Circuit Break, who knows. But yeah, that's the video. Hope you guys liked it. Let me know what you think. What decks do you feel are going to be the most competitive, the most viable? Why not? Are, you know, Zodiac's dead, for example? I'd like to hear all of it down below in the comments. Remember to thumbs if you like the video, subs if you love the video, the notification bell so you will know every time we upload new stuff. And also, I've got a giveaway coming soon. It'll be more details later this week, so you'll want to also stick around for that. It's going to be it. I'll see you guys in the next one.